In today's episode, I'm going to talk about many things, ranging from this past weekend in motorsports where we saw Formula One out in Spain for the Spanish Grand Prix. We saw IndyCar out in the streets of Detroit, the NASCAR Cup Series out in Gateway, alongside the Truck Series in Gateway, and we saw the Xfinity Series all the way on the West Coast out in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to talk about that all, which is going to be very exciting, and I'm also going to give y'all my predictions for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series Toyota Save Mart 350 out at the Sonoma Raceway. It is going to be a very fun weekend, and this will also be the last weekend Fox calls the race before the broadcasting stuff transitions to NBC, which is something a lot of fans have been counting the days of because Fox has struggled this year. They're very inconsistent on some things. NBC just does a much better job, but I will miss Mike Joy. I'm sure some of you will also. And I'm also doing the Pick 5 contest as always, so get your picks down below. And I really don't do this much, but I'm just asking y'all. I'm wanting to change things up after this 1 week break, so comment down below some things you'd like to see on this channel. So get them down below. Enough said here, on to the intro we go.
I'm Chase Briscoe, driver number 14 Ford Mustang for Stewart-Haas Racing, and you're watching William Blackwell on YouTube.
The very exciting race weekend kicked off on Saturday afternoon with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series out in Gateway, in which we saw Grant Enfinger from GMS Racing taking home the checker flag. His second win of the year. He won earlier on at the Kansas Motor Speedway. This is career win number 2 for the 2023 season. Enfinger is going to be a force to reckon with when the playoffs come around. Fast forward to Saturday, a little evening, I guess afternoon and evening mixed together. It's in between. We saw the Xfinity Series in action out in Portland, where we saw a lot of things go on. Even we saw a alleged fight after the race between drivers Jeb Burton of Jordan Anderson Racing, and we saw the 16 car of Chandler Smith of Colic Racing getting together. There was no clear video on what happened at the time, and Jeb Burton went to social media and said he landed punches on his jaw. And during Sunday's Cup race red flag, Chandler Smith put out a video where Jeb Burton missed him, and he wasn't even close to him in the jaw. But the point is, we saw that happen, and we saw Cole Custer taking home the checkered flag. And what does this win mean and do for Custer's future in NASCAR? He raced in the Cup Series from 2020 to 2022. He picked up one win along the way out in Kentucky in 2020, his rookie season. And right now, the 4 car is clearly going to be Josh Berry's car heading into 2024. But the 10 car remains a big question mark because Eric Almirola, he signed a 1-year deal last offseason, and he wanted to retire last year, but he was convinced that next year Carl was going to help him be competitive. And right now, he's not really being competitive, but neither is Stewart-Haas Racing or Ford in general. So does he want to stay another year? Or does Stewart-Haas Racing want to move on and have a fresh start? And there's a lot of drivers to choose from, in my opinion. We got Michael McDowell from Front Row Motorsports. He's doing a phenomenal job. Had a top 10 out in Gateway. Big deal there. Zane Smith, who's the 2022 Craftsman Truck Series champion. And he also got a top 10 in the Coca-Cola 600. Harrison Burton's also in the mix. He races for the Wood Brothers right now. He's getting better week in and week out. And if Cole Custer can go out there and win an Xfinity championship, he can very well be in the mix. And it's important to say this because Stewart-Haas Racing waited to the very last minute to sign Ryan Preece. They waited all the way till December. And they'll do the same for Cole Custer if he can go out there and win a championship. So I don't think they're going to pull the trigger right away for this 10 car, but it's something interesting to talk about. But we fast forward to Sunday morning. The Formula One World Championship Series was out in Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix. We saw Verstappen and Sainz on the front row, Hamilton and Norris on the second row. Going into turn 1, Sainz had a phenomenal start and getaway, and he also got some of Verstappen's slipstream, which he had the lead going into 1, but Verstappen had the preferred line, which allowed him to pull away and Sainz a second. Norris and Hamilton made contact, and Stroll got by them both. But at the end, when it was all said and done, Max Verstappen took home the checker flag. He pulled out a hat trick, led every practice session. He dominated in qualifying. He led every lap of the race, got fastest lap. Verstappen had a phenomenal weekend. But joining him on the podium was Lewis Hamilton of Mercedes, got to represent. And George Russell had a phenomenal weekend, had a terrible qualifying Q2 exit, made up on it, all of it on lap 1 pretty much, where he went on the escape road and made up a ton of ground. I think the escape road in Barcelona, and I remember some of y'all may remember Sochi, the Russian Grand Prix, that right there is like the biggest cheat code ever. It is legal, and you can gain so much spots from it. If you don't know what I'm talking about for Sochi, check out the Fernando Alonso move in 2021, where he went on the escape road and gained 3 positions. It's phenomenal. And George Russell used the one in Barcelona to his favor. So Verstappen winning another Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell on the podium. Is Mercedes back? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Even though Verstappen won by a big margin over Hamilton, I just don't think this can keep going on. I think Mercedes is going to finally crack the code. It may be sooner rather than later, but I am waiting to see that happen. And just one thing I want to mention before I move on. I just feel that Ferrari is a good team. Carlos Sainz, obviously, they're just a one-lap pace team, but they do have decent race pace when it comes to racing against the Alpines and the McLarens. Obviously, they're not going to beat the Red Bulls, Astons, or Mercedes and Alpines on a consistent basis, but if they can have good qualifying efforts, I believe they can beat Alpine, not Mercedes and Aston and Red Bull, but Alpine's their biggest competitor. And Carlos Sainz is doing this all by himself. I believe he's doing a good job, and Charles Leclerc just keeps on holding the team back. Right now, they got a big margin over Alpine in the Constructors' title, but we're still early on in the year where Alpine can make up a ton of ground, because right now, their car is really competitive. And I think they're going to chase them down really quickly. So time will tell there, but I just did want to mention, though, I think Leclerc is holding Ferrari back. And Zhou Guanyu did a phenomenal job in Spanish Grand Prix, and he's a Ferrari sister driver out in Alfa Romeo, Sauber. Could his name be in the mix? I don't know. Time will tell there, but I think Leclerc is holding them back. Then we fast forward to Sunday afternoon at 3:30, where we saw the IndyCar NTT Series out in Detroit. We saw a phenomenal race. Alex Palou on the pole won the race, and we saw some beef at the end between Alexander Rossi and Felix Rosenqvist. That's going to be dealt with internally. I'm sure they're going to have a heated discussion in the competition meeting Monday morning. And we also saw Will Power getting second. And we're going to fast forward to the big race, the grand finale of the weekend, the NASCAR Cup Series out in Gateway. They started around 3:42 p.m. exactly, went a couple of laps, red flag. Came back, we saw Carson Hocevar making up a ton of ground, outperforming Corey LaJoie, who was originally in that car, but he's filling in for Chase Elliott in the 9 car because he's suspended for wrecking Denny Hamlin on purpose in the Monday Coca-Cola 600. LaJoie struggled, but Carson Hocevar did a phenomenal job. It was inside the top 16, blew a rotor, and hit the wall, and Chase Briscoe hit a piece of debris. Briscoe had a hole in his radiator, so that wreck right there took away both of their chances of a good day. Briscoe needs a win bad. That points penalty this past weekend was crucial. His season is effectively over. There's no way, I don't think he's going to win a race, let alone win 4 races and 4 rounds to make it to the championship round. I just don't think that's going to happen. So Briscoe, I just think they're going to be doing a lot of idiot moves this year, just trying to test out things, because Stewart-Haas Racing is very far back every single weekend besides Kevin Harvick, and they're going to have to figure something out. They may not have to get it figured out by the end of this year, but they want to have it solved by mid-2024. But the race went on. We saw many delays, whether from lightning and from wrecks and so on, but we saw Kyle Busch getting the win. Kyle Busch sat on the pole. 3 drivers today won their race from pole: Verstappen, Palou, and Kyle Busch. That was a phenomenal weekend of racing. But though, my biggest winner from this whole entire weekend out in motorsports has to be Joel Guanyu. I talked about him in the Alfa Romeo. He did a phenomenal job. So that's my driver of the week in all motorsports. Enough said here. I'm going to talk about the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series out in Sonoma. The Xfinity Series this past weekend was on a road course, and I believe that's going to help out some of your Xfinity regulars as they head into Sonoma, where they'll be racing with the Cup Series that weekend. So expect a couple of Cup drivers to be racing in the Xfinity race. Right now we have 2 confirmed drivers as AJ Allmendinger for Kaulig and Eric Almirola for Ryan Sieg racing in the 28 car. And the 28 car is usually a car driven by Kyle Sieg. But what's going to happen to him? Does he go to the 38 car, which the team also has? But what's going to happen to Joe Graff Jr. because he's racing full time? This upcoming weekend is going to be interesting for the smaller teams as Cup drivers want to take over them rides. But though this past weekend we saw a phenomenal racing. We saw Sheldon Creed kind of perform really well, and I believe he's going to be a force to reckon with. But though AJ Allmendinger's in the field, he's going to dominate. He may lead every single lap. So AJ Allmendinger is easily going to win this thing for Kaulig Racing in the 10 car. Second place, though, is going to be Sheldon Creed. I'm very impressed on what I saw out in Portland. I just think his win's coming. It very well may be Chicago, where there's no Cup regular. But at the same time, though, Chicago is going to be a race of nutrition and who can stay out the wrecks, because I don't think it's going to race like a road course. I think it's going to be like a Devolution Derby. It's going to be wrecks left and right. And it's something to point out that they're going to have a late start time. I know Chicago is an hour off on East Coast time. They're in Central time. They may run into an issue called lightness. They may run a light and from all the wrecks. So I'm just pointing that out. I think the Chicago race is going to be a logistical nightmare just because everything that's going on there on a weekly basis, which is very dangerous. And 2, the logistics of getting all the teams in there and parked and getting unloaded and stuff like that. It's going to be a nightmare. But though I think there's going to be a race in nutrition. But why am I talking about it? P3 is going to be Parker Kligerman. I think he's going to have another phenomenal weekend. This past weekend was quick, very quick, going for the win. Got taken out at the end of the race. And P4 is going to be Daniel Hemrick. He is a very underrated road course driver. He mentioned this past weekend that he's learned a lot over the years from AJ Allmendinger. And I believe this upcoming weekend, Hemrick is going to be competitive. And one thing that he's got going for him is he raced in Sonoma as a Cup driver back in the year 2019 for Richard Childress Racing in the 8 car. So Daniel Hemrick got a little bit of experience and got a little bit of a head start on the drivers this upcoming weekend in Sonoma, because Sheldon Creed hasn't raced here. Parker Kligerman has. AJ Allmendinger, of course, has. And a 5th place driver, Justin Allgaier, has raced here before when he was racing full-time in Cup. But the upper drivers in the Xfinity Series, they've probably raced here. But some of the smaller ones, no. So Hemrick, I believe, is going to have a good advantage. So will Justin Allgaier, who will finish 5th. But my dark horse, though, this upcoming weekend is going to be Sam Mayer. He's coming close, so close, it seems like, on a weekly basis from getting a good win. Is it going to happen this upcoming weekend? I don't know. AJ Allmendinger is in the field. It's going to be very hard to beat him. And if the only way I can see someone else besides Allmendinger winning is unless he gets a penalty or gets wrecked out, which the wrecked out part probably not going to happen, but the penalty very likely. It's always a good chance for anybody to get a penalty. But there you go. Allmendinger getting the win. 2nd place, Sheldon Creed. 3rd place, Parker Kligerman. 4th place, Daniel Hemrick. 5th place, Justin Allgaier. Dark horse, Sam Mayer, and the weather looks phenomenal. Sonoma is going to be the 2nd race this year for the NASCAR Cup Series on a road course. The first time out, we went out to Dakota, where we saw Tyler Reddick getting the job done there. But I do want to mention this, though. I don't think Reddick's going to be bad this week. I'm just saying, though, I don't expect for the results to be the same as they were in COTA, because COTA is a track where you want to have top speed because you get long straightaways and the corners are very quick. They're faster. Sonoma is a little bit more technical. You want to have a lot of mechanical grip, and it's just going to be a whole nother animal. Saying that, though, I believe a driver that kind of struggled out in COTA is going to have a good day and win and go to victory lane, and that's going to be MTJ Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. this year has been hit or miss. He's always been competitive though, but when I mean hit or miss, going for the win. There's some days he may just run fifth as a ceiling and get that, and there'll be other days he'll come 1 or 2 or 3. This things change for him. He's a little competitive than he was last year at this time, where he missed out the playoffs ultimately. But I think he's easily going to make it this year, because I don't think we're going to see 16 different winners. But Martin Truex Jr. though is going to pick up the checker flag. Second place though is going to be Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick is good here in Sonoma. This is one of his better road courses. He sucks pretty much in like your Watkins Glen, Coda, the Roval. Those tracks Harvick struggles at. But here in Sonoma, Harvick has a thing for it, and I believe he's going to have a good outing here this upcoming weekend. And this is going to be, I believe, his last race in the state of California as a NASCAR Cup Series driver. So he's going to want to go out on top. His last home race. So Kevin Harvick, he may go home this upcoming weekend with a checker flag. Who knows? I think Martin Truex Jr. will, though. Third place, though, is going to be the 24 car of William Byron. William Byron was quick in Coda this past year, and he came home. I think it was runner-up. No, Kyle Busch came runner-up. William Byron had something going on at the end, but he was competitive throughout the day, though. He was quick in the Xfinity race. He's just quick all around. He always finds a way to be up there in the mix. And I think that's going to happen this weekend out in Sonoma. So William Byron, P3. P4 is going to be your previous winner from this past weekend in Gateway, Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch, just like Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex Jr., not a phenomenal road course racer, but he has a thing for Sonoma. And he's going to be in the mix. My fifth place driver. I'm going out on a limb here, folks. You know, sometimes this could be a really good thing or a bad thing when it comes to betting and placing bets, but I think Chris Buescher is going to have a good weekend. He raced here really well last year in Sonoma. He was in contention for the win at the end against Daniel Suarez. Suarez ultimately got the checker flag, but we saw, this is a race a year ago where we saw the 17 team of Chris Buescher flip that switch and become real competitive. They ultimately missed out the playoffs, but they did pick up a win in Bristol, the night race, a Crown Jewel event. So, them teams in the 17 team held their head high at the end of 2022. 2023 rolls around, they're real competitive. Could they go out to Sonoma this weekend in wine country and take home a checker flag? I don't know. Time will tell. They had a terrible outing in Gateway, so they're going to want to turn the page to Sonoma and have a good note before they have a week off, because that's going to be the only off weekend. They're going to want to rejuvenate and get refreshed for the second half of the season, where Fox is no longer going to be calling the Cup races nor the Xfinity races, but they will be calling trucks, Xfinity, and Cup is going to be taken over by NBC moving forward. So they got a week off. They're going to want to rejuvenate. They're going to want to get all of their good mojo back. So you want to go out on a high note here this weekend in Sonoma. Dark horse. It's going to be Chase Briscoe. And Chase Briscoe, he's going to pull off some phenomenal strategies here this upcoming week in Sonoma. And here is one reason why I think he can go to the victory lane. I don't know if many of y'all remember, but Tony Stewart, 2016, raced here in Sonoma. Who was his crew chief? Mike Bugger Ravage, if you will. And he pulled out a gutsy strategy call, and Stewart got the win. He wasn't up front throughout the day, but he got the win based off his strategy. And Chase Briscoe's normal crew chief, Johnny Klossmeyer, is suspended for many races because of the illegal piece they made, as a modified piece Stewart-Haas made. And they got Mike Bugger Ravage on top of the 14 box this upcoming weekend for many weeks to come. Is he going to pull off some phenomenal 1,000 IQ strategies in Sonoma? I don't know. Time will tell, like always. But though, Chase Briscoe, you can never count him out. He has nothing to lose. It's either win or go home at this point in time. And Briscoe is wanting to win a championship, so I'm sure he's going to go out and go for the win. But enough said here. Truex wins. Allmendinger wins in Xfinity. IndyCar's off. Formula One's off. We'll pick back up in next week's time. Next week, we're going to have the Formula One Canadian Grand Prix. And IndyCar is going to be out in Road America. 2 exciting racetracks. I cannot wait for that to happen. I'll see you guys tomorrow.